Before we start today's roundtable, I want to give special thanks to Checkster, our group sponsor. Checkster has become well known in the recruiting industry by providing a platform that easily captures reference checks in the hiring process. I myself have been a customer of theirs for years. I use a reference checking tool for all of my new hires. However, Checkster has now released a new product suite called Insights. This new product suite is really what has excited me to have Checkster as the group sponsor. With Insights, the Checkster platform now covers employees from cradle to grave and not just reference checking, starting when they apply, going to offer, through onboarding, then covering their work at your company, and then to the end with exit interviews. It's an easy to use, easy to understand way of giving and getting feedback from your peers. Checkster's simple goal: to build more productive and passionate teams. Now, if this concept of getting insights from your peers regarding your work sounds familiar, it should, because that's the simple goal of this group: connecting, communicating, collaborating. Support me, support the group. Follow the link below, recruiting.org/Checkster. This will take you to a landing page to sign up for a quick demo. If you're just thinking about automating your reference checking process, it'll be well worth your time. But I encourage you to check out the full Insights suite. I'd love to find out if you feel the way I feel about it. Now let's get to today's roundtable. So let's jump right into it. Thank you everybody for attending episode 52 in Let's Talk Recruiting, where corporate recruiting practitioners get together and talk about various topics that we all come across in our daily lives. This one is kind of a bigger picture, broader scope. Today's topic is 5 reasons the CEO should not ignore recruiting. I've been in companies where the CEO has heavy involvement, and I've been in companies where I never really see the CEO, so it can kind of go both ways. So with us today, we have Amanda Mendez out of New York City. We have Bez Rengifo. Did I get it? Rengifo. Okay, I'll do better. Stephen Laverne. Did I get it?
Yep.
All right. And out of San Francisco. Bez is out of the LA, also where I'm out of. And last but not least, we have Matt Liptek out of Boston. So what we're going to do today is just sort of have a roundtable discussion. Each of the panelists are going to have a sort of a key talking point, but again, it's a conversation. If you're in the audience and you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add them into the chat area. And with that said, Amanda, I'm going to jump over to you first.
All right. Well, very nice to kind of see you guys. I see your names in the chat, but I'm Amanda, New York City. The topic I wanted to bring up was just the fact that us recruiters are the gatekeepers of our companies. And, we're the first ones that are really building relationships with people that are coming into the organization. And we should have our finger on the pulse. And this, I think, became more apparent when quarantine happened, when COVID happened. Everyone had to get locked down, and you were no longer having those kind of hallway conversations or bistro conversations or water cooler conversations. So you can't really see what people are feeling. As recruiters, I think we can kind of, we're good at reading people and emotions and things like that. And you don't see that when you're in remote settings. And I think that it was important for our CEO and just overall leadership to connect with us recruiters to see, like, who are we talking to? How are people feeling? How are we now going to kind of gauge any attrition risks? Like things like this, I think was really important for like the team to. It wasn't so much the CEO as much as the head of HR, but it came through him, and he wanted to see how people were feeling. And I think it was important to leverage us as a recruiting team because, again, we had those relationships, so it was a little easier to just reach out through Slack or Teams, and just see how people are, check in, and yeah, I think that is my point.
So Amanda, in regards to like the recruiters being the gatekeepers and touching base with the CEOs, do you have any like examples where you can say, yeah, my CEO understood and appreciated that? I mean, what are like some actions or things that you can tell if a CEO is on that same level with you? Or do you have any examples?
Yeah, I know there had been some times, especially in the beginning, the CEO reached out to me and was just asking questions about messaging that he was putting out there, and wanted my opinion on like social media and how this would look, and not only giving the message to our employees, which was his priority, but also externally showing that and highlighting, that he still very much cares about our employees, and this is his priority during this COVID, and he wants to make sure that we're safe and we feel safe. So I would say that was the biggest thing, just him reaching out to me to kind of get my take and my feedback.
And to the rest of the panelists, have your experiences with CEO with that direct engagement? I'm sort of with Amanda on that, where I've had CEOs, CTOs, or what have you come into like recruiter team meetings, right, where they're making their face there and that conversation happens. And again, I've seen CEOs where I've never seen them before. Only know their name because of what's up on the web pages. In addition to what Amanda's saying, do you have other examples of when your CEO is on board and that's supportive?
I think one of the things that stand out for me is culture. If they're really key on the engagement of their employees and how does that wrap around culture, that's a way that, because it actually has to be them, not HR or talent acquisition that drives employee engagement culture, because then the rest of their leaders will follow.
Steve and Matt, any examples?
Yeah, I would say where I am, our COO is actually very involved. Our CEO does more of the tech side, and then the COO does more of the non-tech stuff. But yeah, our COO is very involved. I was in a meeting not too long ago where I was like, I'm in the meetings and I don't want to like come across as Mr. Know-it-all. And he stopped me and said, we hired you because you know more about recruiting than anyone in this company. And so we want to be supportive. So if you think, because we're in the process of looking at a new ATS. So it's like, if that's something that you want to do, then absolutely. So yeah, I think that the involvement and as Bez said, is like, it comes from the top down. And if we don't hear anything from the top down, it's going to be very hard to push the needle and move things forward just based on what we want to do. So hearing things from the CEO or the COO and having them, support us, sit in meetings is very helpful. And we get that a lot.
Matt, anything to add?
I think that I've seen it evolve over time. I mean, I've seen, like you said, CEOs that haven't been as engaged and you just see a picture on a wall. But over time, even from some of the smaller companies and moving to the more mid-sized company that I'm in now, or larger company, the CEO is taking an active role in networking for roles, pushing candidates over to us that reach out to him on LinkedIn, even talking to all the recruitment teams about how important talent acquisition is, and making it a priority in performance reviews for the leadership teams. Making hiring that priority, recruiting the priority in the performance review, top of mind for the leadership. That's a big deal.
Yeah, many years ago, I had a conversation with a recruiter at Microsoft, and he claimed that he got Bill Gates while he was still CEO to jump on a couple calls for key critical hires. I don't know if I really believed him, but he said he had it a few times. He doesn't abuse the situation, but if needed, he said that Bill would get on the phone with a candidate. So that was pretty interesting to me.
You'd be surprised if you just asked.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I visited a company last year. It was a smaller size startup here in LA, and there's two CEOs, and they both had line of vision on the recruiting team. And at the smaller size company, every hire can really, really matter. So I'm like, I don't know if I really like to be in the line of sight of the CEO. Nice to have conversations and support, but I don't know if the line of sight might be taken a little bit too far.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much, Amanda. Bez, let's jump over to you.
Hi, I'm Bez Rengifo, talent acquisition leader and HR leader. Started in talent acquisition and made my way over to HR. But I enjoy talent acquisition is the fun stuff. Mainly do healthcare and tech type of recruitment. And I put a few things down, and I was going over some of the comments, but why CEOs should not ignore recruiting is number one, culture, execution, and D&I strategy, because talent acquisition takes an important role in executing a D&I strategy. probably one of the money ones that really stand out is valuation. If you don't have any employees, your company typically isn't worth as much unless you have some killer intellectual property. But people actually do contribute to the valuation of a company. And I did see comments in there about, talent acquisition is the biggest cost to an organization, and that may be so, but it probably is equally, if not more, of an investment from on the positive side. Critical path. I mean, most companies go quarter to quarter, so talent acquisition plays a very important part in the critical path, whether it's product launches, product execution, and whatnot. And the last one I put down was innovation. When you talk about healthy churn, you're talking about new blood, new people coming in, and that's important. You don't have healthy churn, ideas and way of thinking and way of doing things sort of stagnate, and they get to the, that's how we've been doing it. So those things sort of stand out for me.
Do you as a staffing leader, are you involved in kind of the orchestrating or architecting the talent when it comes to like evaluation or the churn? Do you have that opportunity where you can get in with the C-level or CEO to kind of start in to be part of that planning or talking, or is it kind of more reactionary?
Actually, well, it depends the size of the company. Sometimes you're not at large organizations. Even the CEO is not actually putting those plans together. It's another top leader. But yeah, you can get that audience. I mean, even at large corporations. So if it may be hard to believe that a recruiter can actually have a top leader pay attention, but that's how important talent acquisition is. And in today's day and age, whether you're in HR or talent acquisition, you bring something to the table that's important, and that's all about people. It's the biggest asset a company has, and if they're not paying attention to that, then you may have a leader that does not get it.
Panelists, anything to add around what Bez was saying?
Yeah, I think that a seat at the table is becoming more and more apparent for TA. In the last 10 years, 12 years, I've seen it change and shift from TA kind of being pushed off into a corner, per se, to actually having a real meaningful place in a company's structure and strategy and in HR, and contributing to the succession planning, to the headcount, to the operations and manpower as a whole. And I think that the CEOs are starting to take more of a vested interest in TA and really paying attention to that being a critical part of their company.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of what Matt said. I think he's right. Before I took this job at Fivetran, in the interview process, I actually told them I wanted a seat at the table. I wanted to be involved because I'd been in enough places where we were brought in on the back end, and then everything was in code red. We were, scrambling to try to fill requisitions, and everybody was upset. We weren't hitting our hiring goals. So if we can be brought in and sit, and see, have a seat at the table in the planning process, we can then say, hey, these are, this is the staff we need. This is the things that we need to do to, to hit those goals. So absolutely 100% agree with Matt.
I was just going to add, I know every organization is different, and an example coming from me, we're 100-person company. I'm the only tech recruiter. My title is senior tech recruiter. So I don't have a seat at the table. There's no one above me. I report to HR, and it's more apparent every day that, talent acquisition does need that seat at the table. But until then, I really try to find ways to make myself valuable and prove myself to the CTO. And, he loves data. So I try to gather as much as I can. And I even created a spreadsheet and put all of, our engineers there. And I took, how many years they've been at TopAd, how they progressed, so we can try to predict any attrition that could come up, or just identify any trends. So that's just something that I took on myself. And I think I've been at Tabad for 2 years now, and I can just see the evolution and like the respect that I've gained from the CTO with things like that I've done.
So Amanda, I will tell you that in the minds of your leaders, you do have a seat at the table. And I always tell folks that, you know, pretend you are a 200-300 billable asset per hour. So your time is important because, you know, they talk about sales being super important, but hey, if you can't hire that salesperson, so what's more important, the chicken or the egg, right?
Right.
So keep on finding ways to find value, because, you know, one day they're gonna tap you on the shoulder.
Thank you.
You know, what people forget about is the fact that TA really builds the companies. And, you know, I go back to a startup that I was at that I single-handedly, maybe with one other contract recruiter, built the company's personnel and staff up enough where the company was in a position to sell. And they wouldn't have gotten there without TA. You know, that company looked better to the buyer, to the acquiring company, because it built up with talent that I placed. And, you know, I felt good about that during that time. And people look back and they say, you know, that acquisition could not have happened if it weren't for the recruitment function.
When you see people at your company that you recruited in, do you know it in your head, I hired that person or I recruited that person?
It makes you feel good.
Yeah. In college, me and a buddy painted homes and did new home finishing. So we'd help build houses. And every time we drive by a house, we'd help build that. And you'd always know the houses that you helped build. Excellent. Stephen, let's jump over.
Yep. Stephen Laverne. I'm the Global Director of Recruiting at Fivetran, based in San Francisco, currently waiting out COVID at my house in Mexico. So it's been kind of a nice thing. So yeah, and I think one of the things that I want to talk about is just we're the backbone. And I think having the ELT understand that we're the backbone of bringing in, you know, the best talent. We're always trying to work to have the best tools and go to conferences, things like that, to better ourselves, to bring in that best talent for, as in, I think Bez said, for the culture. And I think, you know, I always say we're looking for the best culture add. I don't like to use culture fit because I think when we're adding to the ever existing changing culture of what we have, we again are those people that are at the front door and able to like talk to people, bring people in, and then grow the company, to what it is. I think, and a lot of people understand that most of those companies are not going to run or not going to grow without TA. TA is the cornerstone. So the more that the CEOs understand that, the more that they realize, and I think I'm seeing it more nowadays with, I've been in this for 22 years. The more that, that leaders understand how important it is. Yes, we are a cost center. I get that. But I think if you look at the cost of what we do and then what we add to the company, it's really a no-brainer. And I think if people stop looking at us as so much a cost center and saying, what do you need? What tools do you need? What things do you need to be successful? You can then grow. We're in hyper growth mode now. We're going to end the year, I think, at 500, and then we're going to double in size next year. We have to be looked at as an important factor in the company for us to grow.
Stephen, in that regards, when you forecast with that kind of growth, are you getting support also in the form of budget, or are you kind of left in that, hey, make do with what you got, or do you get that budget respect?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Places I've been in the past, I always got hit with restraints. I will say to date right now, everything that I've asked for, they've given me. And I again, in my interview process, I had told them, I can't have restraints on a budget. I can't sit there and have you tell me no. And so when I went to them with the big cost of changing an ATS, they were like, absolutely. Just tell us what you need, what you want. Make sure you do your due diligence. But I have not been told no yet. And I actually have a call in 2 weeks to talk about the rest of this year and then all of 2021 for budget. So, and I'm going to be very, very, very generous with what I'm going to ask for. So, but no, I think that's important too for them to, for us not to be handcuffed as to, when it comes to budget.
That's one little key item that I've always thought, where does the C level or CEO truly respect the efforts that go into recruiting is around budget? Because it does take spend. You're not doing anybody any favors by giving, a recruiter 30 plus recs on their desk. That's not going to go good anytime. For the whole panel and for Stephen too, do you find that it's easier to get budget with the company, or it's hard, or if your company is forecasted for growth, it's almost always a given, or is it always a challenge to get that budget?
I think everybody's fighting for a piece of the budget. So you have to do the same in your function. If you see hyper growth, well, growth comes with investment. And so I try to change out the words I use. To me, it's important. I try not to use cost. I try to use investment, because it eventually leads to something else that does come back in a return ROI. So yeah, you got to fight for your budget. I mean, they're not just going to hand it to you because someone else is going to snap up the little bit they need to what they think they rightfully deserve.
Yeah, we have what we call a recruiting flywheel that we've created, and it kind of just shows everything that kind of works in conjunction. And like Beth said, we have to. I can't be shy when I ask for money, because again, another leader is going to be asking for that same dollar. And so again, I think if people see the importance of what we bring to the table, I'm not saying that they shouldn't question it at all, but they should definitely, and I should do my due diligence. But it makes sense to be able to go to them and say, hey, I need 2 more recruiters and a sourcer. I need this, or I need that, or I need this tool. It'll help my team function better. So I think it goes in conjunction with how much too that a leader, a CEO, or ELT respects you. If they respect you and trust and hire you to do the job that they said, then they will sit back and say, okay, Steven's asking for this. There's got to be a reason why he's asking for it. I always put a justification to show why. It's never just, hey, I have my hand out. But they've been very, very, very good at saying, absolutely, it makes sense, and let's go for it.
Yeah, I'm just kind of harping on this topic a little bit because, Stephen, to your point about the code reds, right, and which you were saying previously, and not being in the loop in the beginning, helping a company look at their data, who's on a growth projection, right? They've been on growth for the last 3 years, they're projecting 2 more years. So working with the VP of TA, he says, if I can show I need budget, I'll get budget. So now we're looking at total, what are the recs coming? What are the backfill recs coming? What are the hours allocated? How can I best manage my money? Where am I spending? Factoring in spend on recruiting coordinators and how many interviews can they schedule? So really nailing it down so you can come in and ask, here's my budget, add 10% to that or what have you, whatever you want to go with. But to your points, not just asking for money, but showing you get that money. And once you show it, it just makes it hard to say no from that C level, I think. So, but yeah.
And another thing too, whether you're a recruiter or in a management position, you better be walking around and talking to the other leaders, because you're going to find out projects that have not really come forward in the forecasting. Sometimes they're not even projects, they're just opportunities that an executive sees on the horizon, and they really haven't plugged it into their plan for the year. So you got to be aware of that stuff, so you can have that conversation knowing that it's going to happen, with the track record of that executive on executing on an opportunity. So be aware, walk around.
That's a nice point you raised, Bez, with Workday. Started working with Workday. So Workday Recruit and Workday's HRS. I'm like, oh, great. You'll see the forecasted hiring. And the head is like, well, yeah, if they put it in the system. So it's like, you do have to go and find it out, because they may know it and they may have it in their head in their meetings, but it's not in the system. So TA doesn't find out till that last second. Yeah, Stephen, what you call code reds, I called red balls, where you find out about the last second. All right, Matt, let's jump over to you.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Matt Liptak. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Mimecast here in Boston. We're an email security company, and we have a global footprint of 2,000 employees across the globe. So I wanted to talk about the employer value proposition and the brand. That's a big component of having the CEO's ear. Actually, not just the recruitment for the company, but the brand of the company, talking about, the importance of how we advertise the company, positions, and not only that, the brand name recognition of the company. That's a big piece that we are actually having a budget for now. We're talking about budgets. A budget was put aside for that piece, just for the EVP, the employer value proposition, and the brand. So we're starting to roll out new tools in regards to that, but the CEO is taking a vested interest in how we position the company from an employer perspective and how we attract talent that way. So I think that's a big deal for not only the candidates, but for the customers to see how the company's doing when they position the company to attract talent. And then we also look at the feasibility of locations. When we talk to any CEO, we're talking about talent attraction in certain locations, hard to find talent in certain locations, where they're going to be setting up certain offices and where they may attract better talent in different locations. That's another type of conversation I've had with CEOs as well. So I think it's important that those factors be looked at, and I think that's something that we're taking into account now.
Now, when you talk about the employment brand and the CEO, does your brand, maybe not just here, but just in experience and for all panelists, does your brand include like who the CEO is and kind of their personality? Is it part of your brand, or are you kind of going completely outside of who currently is the CEO?
Yeah, I think it has to do with that. I mean, I think a lot of candidates we're talking to nowadays it's important to know who that CEO is and what the story is behind the CEO. And, not only that, how they give back to the culture of the company. And also, we're doing a day in the life of the employees nowadays as well. What the culture's like for the actual individual employee, how that person is treated in the company by upper management and senior leadership. And, I think our CEO has an interesting story here. I mean, he's a CEO founder of the company. He came from South Africa, and he actually is very charitable and gives back to the community. So we do feature that when we look at employer brand. And I think a lot of people like that.
Yeah, Sean, I would say we do a little bit of both. I think it's our CEO and CEO. They're I think high school and college buddies and stuff. So we kind of highlight that, and then we also just kind of highlight the 5Tran culture. So we're always flashing out our culture video a lot, so that people kind of can understand what it's like to work at 5Tran and what to expect whenever they come here. And probably one of the best culture places I've ever worked. So.
And one thing too is it is important who the leader is you're bringing in, because your employees will research that leader and they'll know everything. They'll read business articles. And, I've been at places where a leader came in and was a big outsourcer, and people right away knew, like, let me get my resume going, because sure enough, year and a half later, that leader's outsourcing everything, and people do their research. So it's out there.
Amanda, any experience?
Yeah, again, small company and small team, and I've really taken on the employer branding stuff just because I enjoy like social media and creating content and videos and those things. And I think organically we've put messages out there from the CEO, but I've never, opted to go get something. But that gave me an idea, so thank you very much, guys. But yeah, employer branding is huge, and like for me, we're a tech company, we're a small company, B2B. So when I'm trying to go out there and attract engineers, no one's heard of us. No one knows that we're, a big data company. We do all these cool things. So the second I came in, I identified that and was like, we need to get this out there. The engineers need to know, the languages that we're using and the amount of data that we're working with. So that was my first initiative, and I've just taken that and run with it myself and kind of grown it into what it is now. And I've seen the uptick in LinkedIn and Glassdoor applications, and I think it's because of all the work I did. So yeah, small companies, maybe you can't get the budget and you can kind of do little things on your own and identify and think about like what your candidates want to see and try to create messaging around that.
Yeah, and kind of this cult of personality that we live in. When I've been at a company where the CEO was very recognizable, was very involved in the company. I always liked that because it seemed to have a purpose in your recruiting and always a go-to, and they knew who you were because of that CEO. It just added my thoughts to bringing them in. Like if you remember one company wanted me to recruit for them, like, well, I haven't heard of you. What do you do? Well, we make garage door openers. I'm good. No offense, but no passion there. There's no draw there. So for a company that, if you're one of 1,000 companies that makes a product, whether it's like look at software and Salesforce.com, I did a stint there. Their CEO is having all kinds of stuff. So it was like this lightning rod, hopefully in a good way. It can backfire on you, right? If your CEO gets themselves into some trouble, well, now you got to deal with that. So there's pros and cons on it. But I loved having strong personalities that led strong culture. It's not for everybody, but when you found somebody who had it, when you had the strong culture, it's just such a draw because you're not just trying to hire for a job. This is sort of the way of life here, and is this in sync with what your way of life and what you want to do as your employer? I always thought it was just a great plus. So I love to see CEOs involved in not just the recruiting, but in the overall brand of the company.
But you know what, to Amanda's point, you can be a small company, you can be a big company, and sometimes even in big companies, you don't want to tell the story of the CEO. It's not exciting, but they do their job, but you can always find a story that relates to the type of people you're recruiting for. And whether you're a recruiter in management, go find that story, and it's going to relate to the people that you're going after. It's just a story, but go find it.
Excellent. All right. We're at that half-hour mark. Any sort of final thoughts or comments? I'll kind of do a quick little round the clock here to see if any of you have any final thoughts or comments. Amanda, let's start with you.
Actually, I had a question for Matthew. You mentioned that you guys have budget now for employer branding. So have you gone out and got an outsourced any tools like Comparably or anything else? I'm curious.
Yeah, we're actually, it's funny you asked, we're actually partnering with an outside firm that's going to help us with employer brand. We have a good sized budget that we put aside for that. But it's funny that we're detaching from marketing that way, where marketing's focusing on the product and we in TA are running the employer brand. And so that is where the budget was allocated. And so we're going to partner with this firm that's actually going to deploy an employer brand with new paraphernalia for the recruiters and new branding for social media and so forth. So that's going to be exciting for us.
Awesome. I'm excited. That's actually one thing I asked for my review next year, is to get employer branding to be a part of my title, because I do so much of it. I'm like, I want the recognition. So hopefully that works out, but thanks.
No, Amanda, if I recall correctly, you did a video with your trip to Europe, right?
Yeah, to Oslo, Norway. Yep.
Have you done another storytelling video like that since then?
Yeah, I did one for COVID. Just like we started in February, we went to the Bahamas, and then like 2 weeks later we came back and everyone was in quarantine. So it kind of just shared we were in the Bahamas and now we're all virtual and trying to keep the culture continued. So yeah.
Dang you, COVID. You're ruining everything. Kind of so along the lines of Bez and telling the story. I haven't seen it, but I'm longing for it, is for somebody, when we talk about employer branding, to do kind of like a YouTube vlog type deal where it's an ongoing story, little short clips on the day. I think back to, hey, those CEOs that have that strong identity, perhaps their ego, they would love to have something like that around them. But this consistent ongoing story, on a regular basis, I would love to see some company do where you draw out personalities, not just your CEO, but Rick in accounting, who's really funny, and we'd like to put him on the video and stuff like that. Anyways, just a wish list of mine.
But actually, people love that rough, uncut, unpolished stuff behind the scenes. They don't like it polished. They want to see real life. It's what they call IRL, in real life. So, and it doesn't cost a lot. Really doesn't.
Just creativity.
Yeah.
Just have some creativity. All right, Stephen, let's sort of jump to you. Final thoughts or comments? Oh, you're on mute, Stephen.
Sorry, my final thought and comment, I think, is just to be bold. I think, we've in TA, I think when I first got in, you know, we were taught to just be quiet and be in the corner and kind of do your thing. But I think as my career has evolved and as I've been around five startups and Fortune 500 companies, I am very vocal now. And I think if, the saying, the squeaky wheel, gets the oil, but we have, being vocal has helped TA where I'm at. We have our hands in everything, which is great. And so we are very well respected, very well loved. We're not, the redheaded stepchild in the corner. Things are great for us. So I would just, encourage everybody to be vocal, go to your leaders, talk to them. We are the subject matter experts in what we do. We're no different than an engineer that knows engineering. We know this in and out. So be confident and be bold and be very vocal.
I think as companies come back from the pandemic, I think is an excellent opportunity for TA to step in to be part of that plan, whether it's a slow roll or it's an instant jump. And it's an excellent opportunity to step up and take charge, to be bold, to your words. And Bez, let's go to you.
Sorry, I was in the chat. What was the question?
Any final thoughts or comments? That's all.
No, Sean, I think your comment about starting a series is taking a life of its own in the chat. So let's start a series from behind the scenes, day to day. I think that would be pretty exciting and get people interested.
You could always do a Zoom series of roundtable discussions with people at your company. Just throwing it out there. It seems to be working. All right, Matt, final thoughts?
Yeah, just like Steven said, I mean, be vocal and, have opinions about strategy. I think that TA is evolving over time, the last 10, 15 years to be less transactional and more strategists, advisors. I think we need to really partner with hiring managers to let them know the way the market's moving, how the position is evolving, and we have to let them know how we're going to do business, the best practices for our trade. And I think that's important. And I think that people need to speak up. I introduced myself to the CEO when I first get into companies, whether I was a senior recruiter or whether I was a manager of talent or even at the director of talent, the CEO was a person I wanted to get to know. So I think it's important.
Excellent. All right. With that said, I will let everybody go. Thank you so much for the conversation. Another good one. I much appreciate it. So with that said, enjoy the rest of your day and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.